So state your name, please.
My name is DonnaNeal, Neal.
Okay. And what can you tell us about living in the historic Water Tower neighborhood?
Oh, well, that's a big question. Can I tell you how I found it here
Sure.
to begin with? I moved to Milwaukee in 1991. I was for a job reason. And I knew one person in Milwaukee when I moved here. So she helped me kind of look around at neighborhoods. When I came here, I was living in New York, outside New York City, and had a condo. So the first places I went to look in Milwaukee at that time for condos, the only places that there even had condos at the time were in either Brookfield or Mequon. And I went to those places and I said, I would die if I lived here. It's like I am single and living in some vast suburban wasteland was just not my idea of a good place to me. So then I worked and found the neighborhood, and then I started looking for houses, and I was only looking in the neighborhood. I love where it is. I love the proximity to the lake. I love the diversity and the wonderful homes. I love being, basically right next to a commercial district and next to anything I want to do, I can live a walking lifestyle if I want to, and many days I do. So I can walk clearly to the grocery, to the drugstore, but I can also walk to the liquor store, I can walk to the bookstore, I can walk to the movies, I can walk to the park for exercise, I can walk to restaurants, out to dinner. So it's really, it just makes for, the kind of, and I like living on a street where people walk. So it's a pedestrian area. I like people walk by, and so there's it's a neighborhood. It's not a suburb. So I guess that's my rambling answer to that question.
Okay. How do you use the lake ever? Do you get down to the beaches and?
I used to like when I walk. Apart from the last 8 weeks when I've sprained and fractured my ankle, which has put a little crimp in my style, getting better, as you can see. Typically, I walk somewhere around 3 miles a day, somewhere between 2.5 and 3 miles, 3.5 miles, depending on which walk I take. So in all my walks, or virtually all my walks, have a good portion of the lakefront in them. Typically I will walk over to Lake Park, I'll walk up to the top of the park, I'll go down at intersection of Kenwood and Lincoln Memorial, and I'll walk down either to the Water Tower Street or down to Lafayette and then back. So one of them's a little over 2.5 and one of them's a little over 3.5. And I do that every day, and it's fabulous because the lake is different every day. The sky's different. The water's different. It's a different color. It's a different feel. I never get tired of it. So I don't use the beach much. Every now and then I'll stop at the little sandwich custard stand and park there, or sit out at one of the tables and have lunch out there, or if I'm coming back or going somewhere and stopping there, I might just sit in the car and look out at the lake from there for a while if I just need to relax and get a little break. It's also really cool to watch thunderstorms over the lake. And I guess the other thing I do on the lake, in the summer it's cool to walk in the marina. The marina that's a different, another great walk. So I'll go down to the marina and up to the top of Veterans Park and around the lagoon and all that place. And my July 4th fireplace viewing spot is at the end of the pier. So if you go out the pier, there's a little funky little bar and bait shop and stuff there. If you walk out on the pier and you walk straight out and then all the way to the end where the rocks are, you can essentially watch the fireworks over the city from the water. So you can see the water, and it's not nobody walks out there, but it's not crowded out there. People, because you got to walk a mile on the pier and you got to walk to get there. So it's never crowded because nobody walks that far, and it's a great place to watch the fireworks. So that's how I use the beach.
Okay. Do you said that you love that all the shops are within walking distance, and where do you typically go to for groceries or to get something to eat?
It depends, because I eat out a lot, so sometimes I eat in the neighborhood, and probably mostly I don't. If I had to say my sort of go-to place for some of my neighborhood friends, we'll go to Via. It's just comfortable in there. We like the food. It's casual. And they've been very nice to the neighborhood association. We'll do some of our little get-togethers there. But for some reason, since Via's become kind of my casual place if I'm going to go. So if I'm going out with Thea across the street or with Dawn down the block, or sometimes a slightly larger group of us will go over to Via. I'll occasionally go to Hollander, but I'm much more a Via person than a Hollander person. Let's see, I used to always do most of my shopping at Sendik's right here. But it's really sad in the last year and a half, the food in there and the produce in there, it's really gone downhill a lot. So there's been a lot of changes in, they have less interesting and more mainstream brands. They have less produce. I've bought rotten produce there too many times. It's really sad that, their fish counter now maybe has 2 or 3 kinds of fish instead of 12 or 15. It's really sad. So I've become a Whole Foods shopper instead of a Sendik's shopper. But it just extends where I walk. But I will also drive to Whole Foods, depending on, because if I'm stopping somewhere. So that's kind of messed up. I loved, and the thing I remember, first time, I guess when I had my 40th birthday party, some of my friends and family held a surprise party for me here in my house, which I was not very gracious about, but because they invaded my home without asking and stayed for the weekend. But I will remember, that was back in the early 90s. They all were shopping for the party, and they couldn't get over the market the way it was. The Sendik's was just the most fabulous place. They were in there for forever. They were up and down, going oohing and eyeing over all the food. It used to be the most fabulous little grocery, and these were friends I had who were used to New York City, Boston kinds of stores, and they were like, "There's nothing like this near where we are." So that's actually the thing I'm saddest about right now in this block. But I will do all my kind of drug and paper stuff and all that. I do it CVS. I use the dry cleaner whenever I have any dry cleaning. I never go to anywhere but Boswell for a bookstore. I'm a regular at both the Downer and the Oriental. What else? Who else do I go to? My dentist is in the building on the corner. I'm getting my physical therapy at Athletico. So
everything's right here.
So it is all right here.
So I'm going to kind of switch gears and
Okay.
talk about the neighborhood association that you're
Okay.
a part of. And what exactly do you do with that?
Currently, I'm treasurer. I was a trustee for the first time last year, and now they gave me the money, so, or control of the money, I guess. I don't know if it's control. It's more like the job of dealing with the money. But yeah, I've not been a really active member for all that long, maybe the last few years. But I have friends who've been involved in the neighborhood association for a really long time. And I think I first got sort of really interested in some of the issues related to preservation when we were fighting the construction of the parking structure on the corner. I can't say a lot about it, but I was part of a lawsuit against the city and against the builder developing the parking structure. But because we settled, I'm not allowed to speak very much about it. It's public record that I was a party and a plaintiff. But it just, it doesn't belong. In my view, it doesn't belong in the district, and and that's a historic commercial district that's adjacent to the neighborhood. But that was the sort of the big issue that got me connected to historic preservation. So then I started to go to some of the historic preservation committee meetings and started to get a little smarter. My friend Dawn, who's a past president and also on the board, who's, you may have met her, I don't know if you're interviewing her or others, but she's head of the Preservation Alliance. So so I've also gotten involved in some activities, and we're and so kind of so I have made myself make sure I'm aware of kind of things like when they were revising the preservation ordinance, what was going on with that, and where there were issues and where there weren't, and going to the public meetings on that topic, and the rest. Whenever there's a community meeting here, they're always in the church. I didn't say before, but I vote in the church, right? We have community meetings in the church, so everything's kind of, so that's sort of the nature of my involvement in HWTN right now. And I keep refusing to be president-elect, so. It's like, no. I'll be treasurer, but not.
Do you work with the Milwaukee Preservation
Alliance?
Thank you.
Not directly. I mean, I'm a member. I'm a supporter, so I give a contribution, and I've been to some of their meetings, and I kind of mostly keep abreast of what's going on with them through Dawn. So I know about their work with the Soldiers' Home, and they were really involved in the preservation ordinance, and and now it's in some of the Eschweiler's houses as well, and so so I would say some of my other volunteer work is probably takes much more of my time than the sort of piece I devote to the water tower.
Okay. Do you have any questions you'd like to ask?
There is one question I just wondered. So that building next to your house is a church, right?
Yeah, it's St. Mark's Episcopal. Yep.
Okay. So I just wonder that during your normal life, what's your opinion about this church just next to your house? Did the church that's next to your house will have some influence of your life?
The only it's had some funny influences, because on more than one occasion my house has been confused with a rectory, right? Because it's next door, because I don't know if you looked at the space, but there's barely 5 feet between my house and and the church. So that's one thing. So I've been confused. So occasionally I will have someone knock on the door who's looking for a minister, and it's mostly funny, but the first time it happened, it was kind of in the middle of the night, and it was a couple who was looking for a minister because, like, their mother died, and I was like, so that's good. I don't go to the church. I actually don't go to church at all, but I do have to say, especially in the warm weather months when I have my windows open, I do listen, and every Thursday night I do listen to the music in the church, and I listen to the organ and the choir practice because it's lovely. So, and in general, I think St. Mark's is a really good neighbor. I said they host. They're always willing to host neighborhood meetings, whether it's with alderman or our congressman or senator or whatever. As I said, we all vote there. So they're, I think they're very generous with their property. I think, and I know, and I have worked with, some of them occasionally because our properties are so close. Sometimes when I'm doing work or when they're doing work, we need to coordinate. We need to talk to each other. We need to make sure that the other knows what is going on, and we're not interfering. So.
And, as what you said, that the area just so the building your house located, it's just close to the lake, and you are enjoy to have this area because you can just walk or near to the lake, and also can drive to the lake, have picnic, and watch the lake. Okay, and the other thing is that although it's just near to the lake, but also there is so many stores, and you can very easily to get food or any goods you want to buy. So is that the two important reason that you decided to live in here?
Those are two. I think the other thing was the house itself. I came back to I came back here like 3 times. It was when I first saw it, and I love the wood. I have 2 fireplaces, one on this floor and one on the second floor. I have 2 bathrooms upstairs with bathtubs, and there is just a ton of light, and it's filled with windows and hardwood floors and woodwork that's not painted, and I mean it is on the second floor, but at least no one messed up this floor. And and kind of little added things, like I have the original plans for the house. They still sit in that little cabinet over there, and they were, so I have a little, so I have some of the story of the house. There was clearly, the plans were drawn for a doctor. There were 2 sets of plans. So from time to time, I spent time with looking at, clearly, his eyes were bigger than his stomach in the first plans because they had, big sort of, windows that, kind of, what do you call them? I'm going blank. But anyway, the sort of windows that kind of go out with window seats and the whole deal. So they had much more elaborate kind of design in the original one, and you could see how it was like scaled back a little bit for the second, and then how the garage came at a later date, and so and knowing that kind of all the houses in the neighborhood are interesting. So there's so when you walk in, you know that they all have a story and a history, and and if you live here long enough, you get in a bunch of them because there are open houses, or it's the breast cancer place or whatever. So you end up, or HWTN has parties, or you go into so you end up seeing, and some of the places, I don't know how many you've been in, but some of them are just magnificent. So So I like the whole feel of the neighborhood, and it's not just that it's convenient. It's that it is like a walking place. It's a place where people are out. People are always walking by, my house, and people are friendly and they talk to each other. When you run into someone, you speak to them. When you run into someone in the park, people say hello. You say, talk about what the night's day. It's not like long conversation, but but people talk to one another. It's I said before, my in a suburb, like, the first couple of places I thought, because I said, well, maybe I'll just buy a condo again and live it the same way that I used to live. Well, in New York it was fine because it didn't, but not, but there you can't do anything but get in your car and go someplace and get back in your car and go back home. And I don't know where they get a sense of community in places like that. I don't know where it comes from. It's I assume some people do. I just it's hard for me to find it. I can find it in a place that's more like this.
Okay. Can I ask you that before you moved to Milwaukee, moved to here, where did you live? Where did you live?
Yeah, I lived about 20 miles north of New York City in a town called Ossining on the Hudson River in a condominium. I had, before that, rented apartments in a couple places in Westchester County, New York. Before that, I actually owned my first house back in Massachusetts outside Boston, a tiny little cottage, which came after a few other rentals. So it's my third place that I've owned. But
okay.
I never had a house like this before. It is a lot of work. and I'm a little behind in the housework right now, but. No, something always, there are always big projects. So
it's good, it's nice.
Well, it's expensive, but it's good.
And so you just at 1991, right? You said that you moved from the
East Coast
to the Midwest. Okay, and so I just wonder, do you have some experience like you live in the East, when you live in East, to live in a house like this? Okay, so I just wonder that can you say something to compare the house and the neighborhood and also like the weather, when that the winter is very long in here, but at least maybe the weather is much warmer than here, and so consider all these things during the daily life, and what would you say is the difference between you live in the East and when you move to here to live in Milwaukee?
All right. Well, let's see. Yeah, I always lived somewhere in the Northeast. So I either lived in New England, in Connecticut, in Boston, or I went to school in Vermont, or I lived just outside New York City. So and it's hard to describe the difference in culture, but it's a large difference in culture. It's slower in terms of pace. I'd say people walk faster, they talk faster, they are in more of a hurry in the East than here. I would say, and kind of connected with that, I think, for the most part, people are, I don't know, more driven in the East. It's not a universal thing, but I think there's more there's a little more ambition. There's in terms of like striving kind of for more. I think there's more, and everything's very, and a lot of things are very expensive. So sort of some things that made a big difference for me. If I've become a much more regular golfer since I moved to Wisconsin. If you live in Westchester County, New York, you have to be pretty wealthy to golf, because there are virtually no country clubs or golf clubs where you can go if you're not a member, and you can't be a member anywhere for under 6 figures. So I would golf at corporate events if they were being sponsored by somebody, or I'd golf when I went on vacation or went to visit a friend of mine who lives in North Carolina near 18 golf courses or whatever. But in Wisconsin, you can golf virtually anywhere, and you can golf really cheap. So golf, it's a curious thing, but golf has become a much bigger part of my life since I moved here, just because of its, accessibility, both in terms of the number of places, even and even the fact that we have, what do we have, 10 county courses? I mean, it's, that's a lot, in our, so that's when I think I often told the story when I first moved here. One of the things that made a really big impression on me, and it was the very first week I moved here. My dad came out to help me, just unpack and put the house together, and do whatever things we needed to do with tools and whatever. And we were missing something, and he went over to the hardware store, and he was all prepared to buy whatever it was. I can't even remember what it was at the time, but I know there was another time when I went over there, and because I was having trouble getting my the bolts off my license plate in the car to change to Wisconsin plates, and they were just rusted on. I couldn't get them off, so I went over to there and looking for, whatever you call those things that you get them off. And I was prepared to buy it, and the guy in the hardware, I told him what I was doing, and he said, "Well, why don't you just borrow this one and bring it back?" And I was like, "Really?" Why don't you just borrow it? It's like, and again, it's like, I don't know if that's because it was neighbor. He figured out, my dad had been over there a few times during the week getting this and getting that, and he was kind of getting the sense that there was somebody moving in, and, and it was just kind of being friendly. But I just thought, that was fabulous. And about 3 months later, I was having, trouble with the air in my tire or whatever, and went up to this little gas station in Shorewood, and I don't even think it was probably something more serious than air. And they just kind of came out and helped me and did it for nothing and said, just come back when you have business some other time. And it was, so I think there's kind of something, different. I would also say it's more religious here, which is kind of, I've always, been around, there's, it's not that the East Coast is sort of not religious, but I guess maybe there's, it's more noticeable. More people go to church regularly. More people are engaged with their church, and it's not like that's unfamiliar to me because, my mom is, but it just seems like it's much more a part of it, and much more something that's kind of talked about and kind of in the open and kind of upfront. What else? I would say, clearly the cost of living is very different. So I moved into this house from a 1.5 bedroom condo in New York, and and at the time that was an even trade in terms of money. So so I never expected to be living in a house like this. But I would have lost money tax-wise and investment-wise if I bought less, because I would have had to pay the government back. So so I needed to kind of spend, at that time it was like 150 grand. But I needed to spend that much, to make all the and when I was looking, I could do that here. So it was, I was stunned, but. And it used to, when I first moved here, it used to be that it was far, far less cosmopolitan in many respects. I noticed it most because I'm a foodie. I really like food. I really like restaurants. I like to go out a lot. When I moved here, there was like one sushi restaurant in town, and like one Thai place, and one Middle Eastern place, and you could find one, but there was kind of one of everything in the whole city. In the last 20 years, the restaurant scene has exploded in Milwaukee, and it's really fabulous now. But thinking back to when I first moved here, it was dramatically different in terms of what you could do. But I would say the other thing I noticed was that for the whole time, the theater quality of theater and performance art in this city is fabulous. It may not be New York, but it's a close second level. It is not like a distant third tier. Never has been. So I've been really, really impressed with the arts community in this city since I moved, and its accessibility. It's far more accessible. I'm a season ticket holder to I don't know how many things. So, but you can, and it's fabulous here. So, does that answer your question?
Yeah, and so since you are here, that to live in Milwaukee is compared to live in the Northeast. People can feel much easy because here is not that fast, and stuff can be cheaper than the Northeast. So I think that you mean you can enjoy your life better than you live in the Northeast. I mean, to live in Milwaukee, you can get better to enjoy your life than to live in.
Well, I don't know. I'm not sure. I would say it's better. It's certainly easier to do it from. You can do it certainly more cheaply, and some things you can definitely do, like the golf I was talking about. It's very clearly for me better here than it would be in other places.
Where do you typically golf?
Well, it depends. Depends on who I'm golfing with. So a lot of times with a couple of friends, I tend to, if I'm using a county park and staying on the east side, I golf at Grant, because it's just this beautiful old course, and it's not really long, but you need to play it smart. So it has so you need to be smart when you play, and it's narrow, and I have another golf partner who lives way out west. So we usually pick one of the places that's kind of halfway, like Willow Run or somewhere that's kind of out in that direction. There's some of the courses in the Kettle Moraine or Lake Park or Silver Spring, kind of out in the sort of in the space that's between, because we try to cut the miles in half for both of us. So it depends. I haven't been to Brown Deer in a long time, but I need to get back there. Just because I'm so impressed that the county has a course like Brown Deer.
Okay, so as what we see that before we come in, you just enjoy yourself and reading books outside of the store, and what we see that in this living room, the sunshine is very good during the afternoon. So can you share some experience that you live in the house, you feel good to enjoy yourself? Something like enjoy the sunshine during the afternoon and read some book with some tiny wind around. Some
I think I get. So how do you use your space? And how do you enjoy your yard? Do you have a yard? A backyard at all? Or?
Well, I do. I actually have a very lovely little backyard. I'll show it to you when we are done. No, back in the late '90s, I used to have just a regular lawn back there, but I worked with someone to redesign it, and so my backyard is patio and garden. So I actually have two places where I can enjoy the outside in a reasonably sheltered and private fashion. This one's a little more public because I can, and I knew you guys were coming, so I'm going to sit there. And so it depends on where the sun is and whether I want the sun or I don't want the sun, whether I use this porch, which I really like a lot. I quite frequently at this time of year, I read out here. I will get out if I'm doing work here on my computer or something in the morning. I'll bring the laptop out there, and I often have lunch out there. I use this living room really mostly only when I have people over. It's and I use it as a place where I kind of keep some of my art and memorabilia. So most of the pieces in here have a story and come from a place where I've traveled. Most of the things I have a place and somewhere I've traveled. And I really only use the dining room when I'm entertaining kind of also. I sort of live in the den on my second floor, which is a room that's directly above this one. So it has a east and a south exposure. So it's beautifully sunny in the morning. It's a very bright room. I purposely have sort of, flowered, a combination of white and textured and other flowered wallpaper in there for it to feel spring-like even in the winter. Because, you asked me, which reminds me of just something that goes back to your other question, which is, it's not that different in terms of the coldness of the winter or the amount of snow. In fact, there's, my sister and my mom, who still live back in Boston, probably have had more snow more years than we have here. The difference is there's no spring here. Summer's really short and there's no spring. Winter goes like forever, and then spring is like 3 weeks of mud, and then it's like summer. So we have beautiful summer, and I think we have gorgeous autumn. But spring sucks. I mean, it just really sucks. and that sort of gray season of like sort of February, first half of March, I just always need to leave town for at least 2 weeks during that period, just to go someplace where there is at least some semblance of sunshine. So I spend it, and so I spend a lot of time on my second floor. I'll usually. If it's not warm enough to eat out here, that's where I'll usually bring up, that's where I'll usually eat. I have an office up there as well, so it's where I work or study. Up until about a year ago, I was a graduate student like you guys. And then the third floor is really where I have my bedroom suite. So it's interesting space. Part of it is it's not heated actually, so there's a room that's open for the warm seasons of the year, which is basically all built-in storage. So it's where all my clothes are and closets. It's just totally built-in closets. It's a cool space. So my bedroom is up there, and then I have a fabulous bathroom. Even though it's not heated, it gets heat from the rest, and if I need to use extra heat, I can. But it has I have a really nice whirlpool tub up there. So I have a clawfoot tub in my second floor tub. So the bathtubs were a big selling point. I love to take baths. So that's kind of how I use the space. I have a guest room that I keep in pretty good shape. I also have a lot of my books in there. And then I have one room that is in desperate need of being cleaned out because it's been a repository for things I don't know where else to put them, but I close the door and don't look. So that's how I use the space.
So for education, where did you get your degrees from?
I was an undergraduate in sociology from Middlebury in Vermont. I have an MBA, which I completed when I was also working full-time, so I did a part-time MBA that comes from Pace University in New York. And then after I stopped working a few years ago, I went back to school, went to UWM, and got a master's in liberal studies, which was a lot of fun. So now I'm kind of figuring out what I do next. I have some big sort of volunteer commitments, but I'm missing the school piece. I know it may be hard for you to believe, but it's so different to go back to graduate school when you're kind of done working than it is. When I went the first time, I was working full time. I was working really hard. I was going to school at night. It was like really hard, and it was all like for work and career and the whole thing. When I went back a few years ago, it was totally for me. And liberal studies was just fabulous. It just meant I could just go dabble in disciplines. And so I ended up writing my master's thesis on the landscapes of an artist, Henry Darger, who comes from Chicago. Who's an outsider artist. And if I thought that, after, 35 years working in consumer research for American business, I'd kind of, go end up writing a thesis on an artist. Who would have thought? But it was great fun. So.
I think maybe so, and can you lead us to have a look at your yard?
Sure.